All right, so welcome to our first lecture on Unit 3, Empires Expand. This is topic 3.1. So the thematic focus of this lecture is going to be governance, so politics. By the end of this lecture, I want you to explain how and why various land-based empires developed and expanded from 1450 to 1750. Historically, imperial expansion, it relied on the increased use of gunpowder, cannons, and armed trade to establish large empires in both hemispheres. Land empires included the Manchu in Central and East Asia, the Mughal in South and Central Asia, the Ottoman in Southern Europe, the Middle East and North Africa, and the Safavids in the Middle East. Political and religious disputes led to rivalries and conflicts between states. So let's start with the gunpowder empires. Topic 3.1, it focuses on the rise and expansion of major land-based empires. Gunpowder plays a crucial role in the ability of these empires to consolidate their power and incorporate large territories into their dominion. The term gunpowder empire refers specifically to the Ottoman Empire, the Safavid Empire, and the Mughal Empire. In Unit 2, we discussed the Mongol Empire and frequently mentioned how they were the largest connected land-based empire in history. These gunpowder empires, plus others that we discussed later, rose in the wake of the Mongols. So other empires that expanded in this period. This is just a quick introduction to some other important empires that will show up in the 1450 to 1750 time period, specifically throughout Unit 3 and into Unit 4. Though not considered part of the traditional gunpowder empires, these are land-based empires which expanded their territories. Russia grew when it conquered territories held by the Mongols, and the Qin dynasty followed the Ming in China. The Songhai was a West African empire that took over the territory of the Mali Empire, recall Mansa Musa and Timbuktu from the previous time period, upon its decline. So, this is a great time to emphasize the importance of contextualizing history. We are about to go back in time before the gunpowder empires so we can understand how they came to be before we just jump right in. So the rise of the gunpowder empires, the Ottomans, the Safavids, the Mughals, were strongly influenced by the preceding Timurid dynasty, which played a pivotal role in paving the way for these powerful realms. The Timurid Empire, founded by a renowned conqueror Timur, also known as Tamerlane, emerged in the 14th century and spanned vast territories across Central Asia and the Middle East. Timur's military campaigns and his ambitions to revive the glory of the Mongol Empire left a significant impact on the regions he conquered. While Timur's empire did not survive long after his death, it laid the foundation for the rise of the gunpowder empires. The Timurid legacy contributed to the development of a centralized and efficient administration, a robust military structure, and a cultural renaissance that fostered the arts and sciences. The successor states to the Timurid Empire, namely the Ottomans, the Safavids, and the Mughals, absorbed and built upon those foundations, utilizing gunpowder weaponry and implementing administrative forms to establish vast, multi-ethnic empires that dominated the geopolitical landscape of the time. Thus, the Timurid dynasty can be regarded as a precursor to the rise of the gunpowder empires, as its influence and achievements laid the groundwork for their subsequent ascendance. And a map of the Timurid dynasty. You'll find that on the next slide. So here's that map of the Timurid dynasty. To orientate you geographically, this is a map of the Timurid Empire around the year 1400. The other labeled states are contemporary states. Notice the Ottomans occupy a small area in Anatolia. This precedes their transformation into an imperial empire. The Timurid Empire developed an administrative and military structure for the gunpowder empires that would follow, and the geographic location of the Timurid Empire would serve as a rough starting point for the rise of the gunpowder empires. So let's look more into that Ottoman Empire. This unit focuses on the time period of 1450 to 1750. The Ottomans existed prior to this time period, but in the years between 1299 and 1453, the Ottomans were one of many competing states in the area, Anatolia, as seen on the map in the previous slide. They relied on local warlords to maintain control of their relatively small territory. It wasn't until Sultan Mehmed II came to power that the Ottomans were able to consolidate their power under him and begin the era of conquest and expansion that would characterize them as a true imperial empire. The conquest of the Byzantine capital of Constantinople, depicted in the painting on this slide in 1453, is viewed as the starting point of the Ottoman Empire as a true imperial expansionist empire. So pictured, once again, is a painting by Fausto Zanaro in the 1800s, which depicts the entry of Sultan Mehmed II into Constantinople upon its conquering in 1453. So let's examine Sultan Mehmed II a little bit. One of the most significant instances showcasing the power of gunpowder and artillery was the conquest of Constantinople in 1453. Mehmed II utilized an extensive arsenal of cannons, including the massive basilica cannon, to breach the city's formidable walls. This marked a turning point in military history as the once impregnable Constantinople fell, leading to the collapse of the Byzantine Empire. The Ottomans' effective use of artillery allowed them to overcome the traditional defensive advantage of fortifications and opened up new avenues for conquest. The Ottoman Empire continued to leverage gunpowder technology to expand its territories. The incorporation of firearms, cannons, and other artillery pieces provided the Ottomans with a significant military advantage over their adversaries. The mobility and the firepower of artillery allowed the Ottomans to rapidly advance their conquest, as they could effectively besiege and demolish fortresses, break enemy formations, and suppress resistance. This technological superiority contributed to the Ottoman Empire's expansion into the Balkans, Anatolia, and the Levant. So, superior military tactics. One of the major reasons the Ottomans were able to expand and develop a huge empire was because of their use of artillery in warfare. Under Sultan Mehmed II, the Topku Akagi, the artillery corps, was formed. This was a special military unit that had specialized knowledge in the maintenance and the use of the heavy artillery that aided in major conquests, such as Constantinople. The image on the right of this slide features an artist's depiction of the infamous Ottoman mega cannon known as the Basilica cannon. That image shows the final siege of Constantinople. So we see an expansion of the Ottoman Empire. Mehmed II to Suleiman I is considered the golden age of the Ottoman Empire. We will introduce Suleiman in the next slides. The black shaded area of the map shows the extent of the Ottoman Empire from Mehmed's region. Actually, his second reign. He rules for a few years earlier at the young age, but his father stepped back in briefly, to the end of Suleiman's reign. You can see in the first map that the Ottoman Empire initially covered part of Anatolia and Europe. By 1566, you can see the empire stretched over significant parts of Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. I want to point out the second map, that the Ottomans controlled Mecca and Medina. Once again, looking back on our previous units, these are important Islamic sites, especially during this period. So let me ask you this. What effect might that have had on other areas also under the control of the Ottomans? Pause this for a second and think about that question. Okay, so hopefully you were able to see that the Ottoman Empire acted as a means of the further influence of Islam, especially in European areas under their control. So that takes us to Suleiman the Magnificent. The reign of Suleiman the Magnificent, also known as Suleiman I, is often considered the height of the Ottoman Empire. Under his rule, there was significant territorial expansion, including Belgrade, Rhodes, Hungary, and parts of North Africa. Suleiman implemented significant legal reforms, most notably the codification of the empire's laws in the Canaan name. These reforms aimed to create a more equitable legal system. He also centralized administrative structures, improving governance and efficiency within the empire. Under his rule, the empire also witnessed a renaissance, with the development of Ottoman architecture exemplified by the construction of the iconic structures like the Süleyman Mosque in Istanbul. We will look more closely at architecture in the next topic. Suleiman himself was an accomplished poet and promoted the arts through his court. The power the Ottoman Empire gained under Suleiman made them an important player on the world stage, and Suleiman maintained strategic diplomatic relations, especially with European powers. So let's turn our attention to the Safavid Empire. After the decline of the Timurid Empire, the region was politically fractured and broken apart. On the next slide, you'll see a map to see how similar the boundaries of the Timurid and the Safavid empires actually were. So the foundation of the Safavid Empire can be contributed to the charismatic figure named Shah Ismail, born in 1487. Ismail was a descendant of the revered Sufi sheikh Safi al-Din, whose spiritual teachings had gained widespread popularity in the region. In 1501, at just the age of 14, Ismail launched a successful military campaign against the Akkoyunlu, a rival Turkic tribal confederation ruling over parts of Iran. With fervor and military prowess, Ismail forces swiftly conquered various territories and declared him the Shah of Iran. This marked the birth of the Safavid Empire, which derived its name from the revered Sufi order associated with Ismail's ancestors. So here is the map of the Safavid Empire. It's located in the heart of what is the Timurid Empire. The Safavid Empire developed between the Ottoman and the Mughal empires. The Safavid Empire existed from 1501 to 1736. This map shows the empire's boundaries in 1588. Later in the lecture, we will discuss the rivalries and conflicts between the states. So I have a question here for you. I want you to once again pause the slide, take a minute to think about it, and then come back here for the answer. So, what possible rivalries or conflicts may seem obvious based just on this map? So take a minute, look at the map, and what possible rivalries or conflicts do you think exist? Okay, so hopefully you were able to pick out that the Ottoman, Safavid, and the Safavid-Mughal conflicts because of shared borders between these expanding and militarized states. So let's examine gunpowder in the Safavid Empire. The Safavids employed various types of artillery, including cannons, to gain a decisive edge in battles. These cannons could be used to breach fortifications, create effective defensive positions, and inflict significant damage on enemy forces. Cannons were instrumental in Safavid siege warfare. They also incorporated firearm-equipped infantry units into their army. Muskets and arquebuses, early types of firearms, were used by these infantry units. They established a professional artillery corps composed of skilled gunners who were trained in the operation and maintenance of cannons. These artillery units were highly effective in providing accurate and timely artillery support during battles. Pictured on the left is a Persian musketeer in the time of the Abbas I and Habib Allah Mashadi after the Falsafi. Pictured on the right is a Zambirik, a small swivel cannon mounted on a camel used in both the Timurid and the Safavid empires. And that brings us to Abbas the Great. Shah Abbas I, also known as Abbas the Great, ruled the Safavid Empire from 1588 to 1629. His most notable achievements include the revitalization of the empire's economy through trade reforms and the establishment of a strong administrative system. Abbas implemented policies that encouraged commerce and stimulated international trade, attracting European merchants and establishing diplomatic ties with various European powers. He also undertook massive infrastructure projects, including the development of Isfahan as a magnificent capital city. Abbas reformed the military, modernizing it with the introduction of firearms and improving its efficiency. He also patronized the arts, resulting in a flourishing of architecture, calligraphy, and literature. His reign marked a golden age for the Safavid Empire, leaving a lasting legacy of economic prosperity, cultural advancement, and political stability. We end up getting the Ottoman-Safavid War of 1623 through 1639. This is related to the third listed key concept, the historical development, for topic 3.1. The Ottoman-Safavid War of 1623 through 1639 was the final conflict in a long series of ongoing fighting between the two empires, which began roughly in 1514. While there were certainly other factors that led to conflict other than the ones listed on this slide, there are two major disputes that contributed to this conflict. So this would be a good point at which for me to emphasize the importance of applying examples to the key concepts that we discuss. FRQs will often call upon the key concepts or portions of them. You could see an SAQ on the exam that asks something along the lines of, explain one way in which religious disputes led to conflict among states in the 1450 to 1750 time period. In this case, this example of the Ottoman-Safavid War and its roots in the Sunni-Shah disputes would be an excellent way to answer the question. So back to it. Both empires sought to expand their borders and increase regional dominance, which included vying for trade and economic dominance. These geopolitical disputes led to an intense rivalry that caused open conflict throughout the 1500s and 1600s. Religion was a major point of dispute because the Sunni-Shia divide between the two empires. The Safavid Empire under Shah Ismail, I adopted Twelver Shia Islam as the official state religion and actively promoted it throughout their territories. This decision established a distinct sectarian identity for the Safavids and contributed to the formation of a Shia orthodoxy in Persia. In contrast, the Ottoman Empire, as a Sunni power, adhered to the Hanafi school of Sunni jurisprudence and considered itself the leader and protector of Sunni Islam. The religious divide often led to religious persecution and discrimination against minority sects in each empire. The Safavids, in their zeal to establish Shia Islam, imposed restrictions on Sunnis, particularly in territories they conquered. Sunnis faced limitations on practicing their faith, and some were forcibly converted to Shia Islam. Similarly, the Ottomans, in regions they controlled, imposed restrictions on Shia communities and sought to suppress Shia influence. And that takes us to the Babur of the Mughal Empire. Born in 1483, Babur, originally Zahir-ud-Din Muhammad, was a descendant of the Central Asian conqueror Timur and the Mongol ruler Genghis Khan. Inherited a strong military legacy, Babur set his sights on establishing his own empire. Through a series of military campaigns and strategic alliances, he achieved remarkable feats and laid the foundation for what would become one of the most influential dynasties in Indian history. A map of Babur's conquered territory that became the Mughal Empire can be seen on the next slide, right here. So the Mughal Empire expands. Babur's journey to power began in Central Asia, where he initially ruled over the kingdom of Fergana. However, faced with numerous challenges and political turmoil, he was compelled to seek a new realm to fulfill his ambitions. In 1526, Babur seized the opportunity presented by the weak and divided Delhi Sultanate in northern India. With a relatively small but fiercely loyal army, he confronted and decisively defeated the Sultanate forces at the Battle of Panipat. This victory marked the beginning of Babur's rule in India and the founding of the Mughal Empire. Pictured is the Battle of Panipat and the death of the Sultan Ibrahim, which marked the beginning of the Mughal Empire under Babur. So now we see that the Mughal Empire expands, and we're going to talk about Akbar. Akbar, grandson of Babur and one of the most renowned rulers in Indian history, ascended to the Mughal throne in 1556 at just the age of 13. Under his leadership, the Mughal Empire experienced a period of remarkable expansion. Akbar's reign, known as the Golden Age of the Mughal Empire, witnessed significant territorial conquests, innovative administration reforms, and a flourishing of art, culture, and religious tolerance. Empire administration and cultural achievements will actually be explored in more depth in the next topics of Unit 3. Here, pictured, Akbar trading an elephant and gold coins minted during Akbar's reign. So, Mughal Empire expands under Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb, the sixth Mughal emperor, ascended to the throne in 1658, inherited a vast empire that spanned most of the Indian subcontinent. Known for his strong military prowess and zeal for expanding the empire, Aurangzeb embarked on a series of campaigns that extended the Mughal Empire's territorial reach to its greatest extent. He employed war elephants and heavy artillery in his military campaigns. However, his reign was also marked by religious intolerance and internal conflicts, which had long-term implications for the stability and cohesiveness and the cohesion of the empire. So then we come to the Mughal-Safavid War from 1649 to 1653. Just as we examined with the Ottoman-Safavid War earlier, this conflict directly relates to the key concept. Political and religious disputes led to rivalries and conflicts between states. Let's start with the political differences. The Mughal Empire, under Emperor Shah Jahan, sought to expand its territories in the northwest regions of the Indian subcontinent, particularly in the Kandahar region, which was under Safavid control. The Mughals aimed to secure strategic trade routes and access to resources, and their territorial ambitions clashed with the Safavid Empire's desire to maintain control over the region. This geopolitical competition over border territories and trade routes created tensions between the two empires. Religiously, religion played a significant role in the Mughal-Safavid conflict. The Mughal Empire was predominantly Sunni, while the Safavid Empire was staunchly Shia. Both empires had a long history of sectarian differences, and these religious divisions were amplified during the war. The Safavid rulers, particularly Shah Abbas II, considered themselves as the protectors and champions of the Shia Islam. They sought to promote and strengthen the position of Shia Islam in the region and viewed the Mughals as a Sunni power encroaching upon their influence. Pictured, we see the surrender of Kandahar in 1638. This picture event predates the war here, but it remained a fought-over point throughout the Mughal-Safavid War. And that takes us to the Qing Dynasty, 1644 to 1911. Much like the Yuan Dynasty that we covered in Unit 2, the Manchu-led Qing Dynasty was what some historians call a conquest dynasty. Conquest dynasties are those which non-Han ethnic groups conquer and control China proper, but do not assimilate fully into Han culture or tradition. Many previous Chinese dynasties are up for debate about whether or not they fit the somewhat controversial designation of a conquest dynasty, but the Manchu rulers of the Qing dynasty do fit the historiographic definition of a conquest dynasty. And that takes us to Prince Dorgan and the Manchus. The Ming dynasty forced internal unrest in the 17th century. A peasant uprising led by Li Zicheng severely weakened Ming authority. These internal troubles provided an opportunity for the Manchus, led by Prince Dorgan, to exploit the chaos and expand their influence in China. Several Ming officials defeated during this early period of Manchu invasion, and in 1644, Beijing was captured and established as the center of power for the new Manchu-led Qing dynasty. And here, pictured, is Prince Dorgan of Manchuria. And I like to point out to you guys that the writing on this image is Manchu script, which the Manchus adopted and modified slightly from the Mongolian script. If you recall from the study of the Mongols in Unit 2, Mongolian script was adopted from Uyghur script. This is just an interesting transfer of written language. You may be able to see the resemblance between the Manchu script and the Uyghur script. So just for fun, all of the coins on this slide come from some time during the Qing dynasty. Which ones feature Manchu script? Pause the slide, take a look, see if you can figure it out, and the answer will be on the next slide. So now that you've taken a second to look at these coins, let me ask you, how might you sort these coins? Think about that for a second. Now, while there is no exact answer, you could identify different characteristics, which is a great way for you to explore possible influences on China during the Qing. For example, coins with Manchu script, coins that feature square holes, coins with only Chinese characters, coins that contain English writing, and coins that feature dragons or non-written design. That would be one way of organizing them. Though the late Qing is not covered in this unit, the presence of the dragon on certain coins is probably connected to the late 1800s and early 1900s when the quintessential dragon flag was adopted. Additionally, coins that feature English language demonstrate the influence of the British. The coins with the square holes represent a continuity in Chinese coinage. This style of coin is found as early as 350 BCE, and the hole allows for coins to be threaded onto a string. So let's discuss gunpowder during the High Qing. The Manchus of the Qing dynasty relied on gunpowder to both expand the empire and maintain control of it throughout their existence. The period known as the High Qing, or the Golden Age of the Qing, from 1683 to 1799, is particularly notable for its use of gunpowder weapons. Though the Qing is not technically considered one of the gunpowder empires, like the Ottoman, the Safavid, or the Mughal, they did employ artillery in order to expand and maintain their land-based empire. So we can draw those parallels between the Qing and the traditional three gunpowder empires. Cannons were used during the Qing period. Pictured is a Korean cannon from the same era and of the same type used in China. However, cannons were not widely used in Qing military campaigns. Most soldiers carried smaller, more maneuverable weapons that worked better on horseback. Notable Qing emperors. Emperor Kangxi and Qianlong, both notable rulers of the Qing dynasty, launched successful military campaigns that significantly expanded Qing territories, incorporating regions such as Xinjiang, Tibet, Mongolia, and Taiwan into the empire. Additionally, Kangxi and Qianlong both emphasized cultural assimilation and adopted a patronage of arts and scholarship. Their achievements in territorial expansion, governance, and cultural assimilation played pivotal roles in shaping the Qing dynasty's legacy as one of the most extensive and influential dynasties in Chinese history. So here we have a map of other gunpowder empire states. This is just a very quick glance at other empires or states which used gunpowder weaponry to their advantage during this time period. The Saudi Sultanate of Morocco successfully defeated the Songhai with the use of cannons, and this conflict is going to be explored in more depth in Unit 4 within the context of the Portuguese invasion of Morocco. The Dai Viet Empire was able to expand southward and gain control of Champa territory and the Mekong River Delta. They were able to do so because they had gunpowder weapons that put them at an advantage. Disputes over the Mekong River Delta would continue into the Cold War era, but more on that in Unit 8. Korea adapted artillery and reformed their weapon military so it was centered around gunpowder weapons. In the 1650s, the Koreans aided the Qing in a defeat over Russia, and the victory was due in large part to the use of gunpowder weapons. Russia began expanding under Ivan IV, also known as Ivan the Terrible, and this expansion continued through Peter the Great. Gunpowder was instrumental in Russia's expansion during this time period. All right, so that is it for topic 3.1. As always, here are your key ideas for review. I highly recommend you just get a separate notebook. You write these down as like a cheat sheet for your 3.1 key ideas. And as always, please view the Heimler's history review for just a little sum up of this unit. Have a great day.